then years later, I ran into Bill and was playing my dad. And, I was like, Bill. And he turns around and he was like, oh, dear God, David, just the sight of your face makes me want to have a coronary, nothing personal. He's like, what was the rest of that movie like? And I was like, it was really great, actually. And I think somebody came and talked to Sydney because we were all pretty young and everybody was panicked to go on with the film, And a few days later, I was done and released from the film, and that was the single most. I love that movie, and it did really well. And boy, when I left that set, I was so glad to be leaving that set. I was overjoyed. I was embarrassingly overjoyed. We'll let it rest at that. So,
How old were you when you started acting? What was the first thing you did?
the first anything?
Yeah.
Like acting in high school with a little Shakespeare company?
Professional.
The first time I was paid any money with a professional company was, I was basically a complicated extra in a production of a play called Wings by Arthur Kopit at South Coast Repertory Theater. And it's a great play about a woman who has a stroke, and it's really a great play. It was an incredible production. But the first thing on film that I did was to get my card, and it was an industrial film about a game show called Let's Make a Meal. It taught about the 4 basic food groups. Remember the 4 basic food groups? Now it was like 17 or 3 or something, but then there were 4 basic food groups, none of which incidentally were Oreos. And so that's what that was. So that was my first. And then after that I did a pilot for a sitcom that did not get picked up. It was called In Trouble. And that had in it Nancy Cartwright, who later played my girlfriend Muffy on Fame and was my first screen kiss. And now is, of course, Bart Simpson, multi-millionaire and superstar. And that's kind of, interesting because remember the Simpsons were first on Tracy Ullman's show? Tiny little kind of sketchy cartoons. I was watching Tracy Ullman with a couple of friends when the first one came out. I didn't know it was Nancy's voice, but somehow I was obsessed with Bart, and I was screaming, Bart Simpson's a superstar. And they're like, it's a cartoon character, you shut up. Later I found out it was Nancy, and that's what was hitting my heart. Oh, I gotta take this. Hello? 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 That'll probably happen again in a second. But, Nancy, yeah. Also in that show was Doris Robertson. I gotta tell the story because it's just funny, because Doris, Doris, she, from Everybody Lives Raymond and everything, she's a great lady, riot. But on that pilot, she was lucky to get out alive. And one day she came in with, I don't remember which was first, but she wound up with like a sprained ankle that was all wrapped up. This was all happening to her at home. And then when she broke her arm. So by the time we shot it, she was like in a cine cast and a sling. She had a thing on her foot and a cane. Of course, she was still great and incredibly funny because she's funny without even trying, really. She's just, But she was multiply injured. There was nothing we did. But that was my first after show. And then I don't remember what came after that. After that, it started snapping and snapping. And then eventually Fame, which was a good story because I came in, Fame, the day I auditioned for Fame, I had auditioned for, you remember the movie Class? With Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy and Jacqueline Bisset and everything. Well, I had been reading for that, and there was a character in it and it's another one of those how they rewrite these things. By the time they made the movie, they cut that character into 5 different people, so they didn't have to have one guy that they were paying to be there for weeks. But I read the script, and I loved it, and I loved the part that used to be there. And there had been a series of really grueling auditions in the office of Lynn Stallmaster, who was at the time the king of casting in a way that nobody now really can be the king of anything. He was like the top guy, he was the guy. And so it's Stallmaster's office, and it's all those actors, you know, it's McCarthy and Rob Lowe, and all the young people wound up being in it, being read in thousands of different, you know, You and You together, now You and You together, all of that. So long, grueling auditions in front of a director that had made, Louis Carlino, he made The Amazing Santini, The Great Santini. It's a wonderful film, so everybody wanted to be in this movie because the script was good and the director was good, and there's Lynn Stallmaster, and you know, he can change your life. And so they're very nerve-wracking auditions, and round and round and round, and I leave, and they tell me when I'm leaving that I should go home and pack a bag, because if I get it, I'll have to leave like in the morning. And so the next thing I'm doing is auditioning for Fame. And the part I'm auditioning for there is really, really small. He's just this guy who, lines are basically, two of the characters are in a rehearsal room doing music, and this was just a kid who stuck his head in and said, I need this room. And they said, 5 minutes. And again, it's look, I signed up for this, it's past my time. Okay? Just 3 lines about get out of my rehearsal room. And so I came in, and Al Honorado was the guest director, Bill Glenn, the executive producer, and Mark Daniels was the director. What I didn't know about Mark Daniels at the time was, like, if you watch I Love Lucy, he directed a lot of them, and he and Desi and Lucy invented the multiple camera, 3 or 4 camera sitcom method that they used, that everybody uses. So Mark Daniels, I didn't know, was a comic genius and a television genius. So I'm reading for these guys, and before I read, they say, you know, so what else have you been doing? And I kind of didn't give a rip about this audition because Fame was, you know, I didn't really watch it, and it was a tiny part. And so I was like, I'm glad you asked, because I just came from the most intense place, and I started telling them everything that's going on and what the actors were doing in the men's room and how everybody was liking their hair, and the directors running around and all this intensity and everybody being so intimidated, and I just went on and on and on and on. And I was like, I'm really glad to get that off my chest, because now I think I can read for you reasonably. And Bill says, yeah, but I don't want you to read that. And I was like, what? He says, I've got something else.